Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
On our own path. You know, it is a beautiful path to be on.
Oh, it's a great path. Speaking of U2 and 40, thank you for letting us use their song.
Yeah.
You know, they just did a show at the Sphere, and I had a chance to see it. But
that's where we're going to retire. By the way, we're going to take our show.
Hey, why don't we do?
Sphere.
Yeah, why don't we do a Sober.Coffee from the Sphere? That's awesome.
Yeah.
But their last show, their 40th show, they did
closed with
40.
Nice.
And, you know, Bono gets up there and he goes, hey, it's been 40 days. And he tells a story. He goes, hey, we had 40 minutes left to record on the War album.
Right.
He goes, we didn't know what to do. He says, I picked up the Bible.
You picked up the Bible.
Psalm 40.
You too.
And he goes, that's how it came. And that quick, that's how, just the words right out of the Bible.
What's your favorite lyric pulled out of there? You've quoted this lyric.
He picked me up. He pulled me out of the miry clay, set my feet on solid rock. And today, I sing a new song.
Yeah,
and that's the story of my life, man. So thank you, U2 again. We haven't paid him anything, but we haven't made anything either.
Well, we reached out to him at the beginning of the podcast, and we're like, hey, we're going to be big.
We try to do it.
My mom's going to listen. We'll pay you.
Yeah. Your mom's our biggest listener. Tell her thank you.
Oh, yeah, you know it. You know it. Hey, guess what? We got a table for three today, man. I want to jump right in.
Who's here today?
Patrick Day, Chaplain Patrick Day is here. Hey, Pat, how you doing,
Pat,
man?
Good morning.
I'm doing good, guys.
Good.
Welcome. So, Pat, where are you zooming in from?
I'm zooming in from a suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Okay, fantastic. Pat's got a really cool office.
Can you throw an A in there? Like if Minnesota A?
I think that's Canada.
How about to Minnesota?
There you go. Go. Thank you very much. Yeah. So Patrick Glenn is a author of a book that I read this over the last couple of weeks and really enjoyed it. So let me try and give you the skinny on Patrick and the book.
Bring it on.
Yeah, so it's called Finding the Safest Place on Earth, Jack Overcomes an Addiction. But the real cool thing is that, and I'll let Pat tell a little bit more about it, but he is a chaplain and he has counseled one-on-one to hundreds, if not thousands of people, but then in group settings as well since 2005, 2006, Patrick?
Yeah.
You have been counseling to groups as well. So you've been doing this for a long time. And the book, Jack, the character in the book, is a compilation or a combination of people that he's kind of counseled along the way.
Okay.
So it kind of picks up
So it's a mutation of many personalities and experiences. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
So it's great. So anyway, welcome, Pat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I like that mutation word.
I know, right?
Used that before, but I'm going to write it down.
There you go.
Yeah, I didn't see that in any of the reviews. That's like my kids are all into the zombie stuff now. I'm like, really? Really now?
So on the cover of the book, it looks to me like, Pat, if you could describe the cover of the book.
Okay. The cover of the book is... this is originally a picture by Rembrandt.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't use his. I used another image that I found online. But when people ask me, where's the safest place on earth? Or if I bring it up in a subject, I say, the safest place on earth is being in a boat in the Sea of Galilee with waves breaking over you, and you're certain to go to the bottom of the Sea of Galilee any minute.
So far, not sounding safe.
Bailing out water,
right?
And that's the safest place you can be. People said, "How's that?" I said, "When Jesus is asleep in the stern of the boat."
There you go.
So that's the reason I picked this picture.
Right.
And the apostles were a doubting lot. They were always questioning who Jesus was. And when something like this happens, they were absolutely amazed. I think that the apostles, as I'm reading this is in the 4th chapter of Mark, this particular story of Jesus asleep in the stern of the boat. I expect when I'm talking to inmates in a jail or I'm giving a presentation, I'll ask them, I'll say, what do you think that those apostles were doing? And they look at me and I said, what would you do if you were in a boat and it was starting to sink? They said, we'd bail. We'd be bailing water.
Right.
And I said, that's what I think that the apostles are doing. They were bailing water. And Jesus was asleep, and then they woke him up. And then I'll say, what do you think that the apostles wanted Jesus to do?
Bail.
Help bail.
What's that?
Help bail.
Help bail water.
Absolutely. Most of them don't get that. But yeah, help them bail. They saw him turn, they just recently saw him turn loaves and fishes into enough to feed 5,000 people. That had happened in the chapter before. So they figure, well, that this guy can do that. Certainly he can get the water out of the boat.
So this is super interesting how this stuff works. And Mikey, you've heard me say it, Pat. You've never, the first time that we've chatted, you've never heard. But I just love how this stuff works. And at this point in my life, and this point in my sobriety, and this point in my spiritual path, I have a significant level of awareness just how stuff works. So Mikey and I are part of a spiritual men's group at our church. Not only, we're on the sober path, we're, in AA, I think AA in how it works mentions God, he, higher power 17 times or something, right? But it doesn't give you any it brings you to the door of God,
right?
And then leaves you questioning, leaves you, right? You're
searching.
And most of the crap, the religious crap that we grew up with didn't work, right? Or wasn't working or didn't work. And so Mikey and I dove in the spiritual pool and deep end and did a whole bunch of laps. We drowned some days, right? But we collectively found a spiritual path. And part of that is this men's group. Kind of grew into this men's group. I think we got 17 or 19 guys or something. And that's why I said about the cover, we just last week, we covered this exact story. So, I mean, I'm just telling you how it works, man, where things are underlined, but you got to pay attention. And it's like, hey, Glenn, here's another example. Let's cover this again and pay attention. Right.
Yeah, sometimes we need to hear stuff more than one time.
Right. And what's nuts, Pat, is how you brought it out, right? They were on the Sea of Galilee. I can be a storm in a conference room at work, right? I don't need to, have waves. I can have memos thrown at me, right? Or demands or covenants thrown at me, right? So I can have my own storm that in my mind is just as bad as what they were doing out in the Sea of Galilee. And it's just amazing what I have learned because, Mikey and I share a lot of, personal stories and experiences. What we have learned, it doesn't matter what the storm, right? When you're living on the right path, when you got the right tools, when you have the right God and you're working on a relationship with God and at least trying, right? There's no perfection, but there's trying. It's amazing the help that you find in those storms. And sometimes it's bailing. Sometimes you're pulled out of the storm. Sometimes the storm is stopped.
Right. Yep. It is absolutely amazing.
So I love the cover. I love the cover.
Well, and the content is good too, because Jack, the character, what I appreciate about Jack is every time he thought he got close to recovery, boom, the storm spurred up again, and he was back out there drinking again. Now, my story, Pat, is that as far as AA goes, once I was introduced to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I've not what they call relapsed. Prior to AA, I relapsed every 24 hours. I was done drinking. I was never going to drink again. And there it was with a bottle in my hand, right? There I was. Not a fancy whiskey glass, just a bottle in a brown paper bag. There I was. Talk to me a little bit about Jack, who again is a combination thereof. But why do you feel, in all the counseling you've done, why do you feel that Jack had such a hard time staying on the sober path? Tell us why you think it was, and then what got him to safety.
I'm saying this tongue in cheek. Jack's favorite song. It doesn't say in the book, so I'm kind of making this up.
Okay.
But Jack's favorite song was Frank Sinatra's "I Did It My Way," and therein lies the problem. That Jack kept doing it his way. He kept thinking, "Oh, I've got the secret now." So he had a little bit of information, and it was all Jack. I remember one time when I was driving. I don't turn the radio on. I was driving, and a prayer came into my mind, and it was, "Lord, show me how to live my life. Get into my life. Show me how to live it, and I'll be a shining light for you." And I tell people that story, and they say, "That's a great prayer, Pat." And I said, "That's a terrible prayer." And the Holy Spirit immediately checked me. And it says, God says, no. He says, "You come into my life, and I'll show you how to live there, and I'll be a shining light for you." So that first prayer, and that's my tendency, guys, is that I still want to do it my way. And I had one of those situations like the boardroom when you got all the memos and everything came at you.
Yeah, right.
I was trying to do 3 things at one time. I was talking to my brother, who's a publishing client, and I just got so frustrated. And I was just kind of like just going all over the place. And I was not letting God into my life. And I had to meet my spiritual partner in St. Cloud, which is about 50 miles from here. And so on the way, I calmed down. But that's the trouble. I do it my way. So you got the bottle in the paper sack, and then you put it away, and you go 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 10 days. I've been in jail, and I met a woman one time, said, "I stopped using for 6 years. And then something happened in my life. The wheels came off, and I started using again." And she said, "That's why I'm back in jail." You're never safe.
Right.
You guys know that.
Yeah.
And the story of Jack at the restaurant in London at the retirement, there's an example of you're never safe because you don't know what's coming on.
Yeah.
Jack had thought he was perfectly fine. And then he's sitting there, and they're giving toasts, and he's going to either please God or he's going to please everyone else there.
Right.
He decides to please everyone else there, and he starts drinking.
Right. Glenn has a very similar story when you were on the balcony of your conference, and you told your sponsor, what did you tell him? You're in great shape.
This Pat just brought out an absolute key, right? I think in general, I think a lot of us are owners of our own world, and my way worked really, really well for a long period of time. So that puts a brain marker in there that, hey, I wasn't just fooling myself. It wasn't just false ego saying, I had proof that my way worked better than others, right? So I was 13 months sober, Pat, and I'm at a conference, and I just nailed that conference that week. I'm standing on my balcony looking at the Rocky Mountains.
You did it your way.
And I'm on the phone with my sponsor, and I said, "I've got this."
Right.
And I drank all the way home. One of the most disastrous relapses that I had.
Yeah.
And because I didn't really have any tools, right? And so when the storms are and it wasn't just that wasn't a storm. It was the opposite, right? When things are going great, and the big book talks about, hey, when things are going great, guy was going to close a deal in D.C. and got all messed up going to D.C.
Right.
So there's daily diligence. But what I found is I got to the point where I realized that my game didn't work, and that was my quote unquote point of surrender. And I look at myself on the B team a lot these days, Pat, and and which means I'm no longer the driver of the bus. I sit in the back of the bus, and I am amazed on a regular basis because when somebody else, when the driver of the bus says, we're going to do this, and I'm like, well, that plan sucks. You're not going to get my plan's better, but I don't impose that like I used to, and I just enjoy the ride in the back. And I'm amazed at how many times their plans work out better than mine, right? And it's almost a joke for me. My way's not the best way,
right?
So
Jack,
and
yes.
in many ways, I was my worst enemy. My ego was my worst enemy. And when I gave that up and I surrendered, and Pat, what that looked like for me, I said to my counselor, after 4 days at a conference and a total blackout, 6 hospitals across the country, an 8-day detox, I sat on my counselor's floor on a Friday, and I was just tired of my own BS. And I looked at him, and I said, I will do anything you tell me to do. I just cannot take another drink.
Right. There you go.
That was my surrender. I gave up my way, and still today, I have a challenge that comes up. I call my sponsor. I call Mikey. I call some brothers in the program, right? I pray about it, right? And, Pat, I like how you change that prayer around, man, because you know what? It's small things like that make a major mental difference.
Right.
So that's a big thing in the book is Jack was hopeless and until Manny stepped into his life. And Jack, as you know from reading the book, he was always happy to see Manny.
Yeah.
And he was uplifted when he saw Manny. And but then he'd go back to his own ways. I got a quick story I'm going to tell you, Mike, that fits your situation exactly. It's the pride thing. I've gone 13 months without drinking. I've gone 5 years without drinking. I've done this. I've done that. I'll tell them in the jails. What are I hearing, guys? You got more eyes than a potato. There's your problem. So anyhow, there's this pastor in a church, and his specialty is dealing with people with committing adultery or pornography, anything to do with the sexual realm. And he tells these guys, he said, you can quit. You can just decide, I'm not going to do that. And he said, I'm a living example of that. He said, I do not have impure thoughts. I do not lust after women. He said, I've made myself pure. And that was his message. And he was proud of it. He did not have any sexual temptations. So now he's in a conference in New York, and he hails a taxi cab. And it ends up that he has to share it with 3 other people. And sitting next to him, crushed into him, is this voluptuous woman who's wearing a very short skirt. And her legs are pressed into his legs. And she has clothes on that's very revealing. And all of a sudden, he's got lustful thoughts. He thought he had it. He thought he had it nailed, but he didn't.
It's like it's like that Mike Tyson quote. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, until that girl sits next to you. Everybody feels good about their plan, and then all of a sudden temptation is right in your face. So, hey, Pat, I have to ask you. So you've worked with, and we're a little limited on time here, but you've worked with a lot of, alcoholics and addicts, and that's just an amazing mission. How do you get, it seems like for me, it was a big step, a big leap from, that point of surrender to the spiritual path, right? I know a guy that was on his, in rehab, knelt by his bed, but got struck by a bolt of lightning, and his life was perfect ever since. I just don't believe that. First of all, I think that's a great story and it tells well, but I don't think it's real. Secondly, for me, it was a long, slow grind, right? And a lot of people that I know that come into the rooms of AA, like they have no conception of God. They hate God. They don't have a good relationship. They don't really know, right? So what would you say, or what do you say to encourage people to get from point A to point B? What does that bridge or transition look like?
In that particular one, I use percentages. So what I'll say to a person is that, and people who are drinking, that stop drinking, or people that have committed crimes, it's really kind of the same statistics. 20% of them, and that's being very generous, can do it on their own. They can just by force of will, like a weightlifter lifting weights every day until he's a prize weightlifter. That's 20%. The other 80% are going to fail. They're going to be back drinking within a few weeks or a few months, some a few years. So what I said, do you want to be a 20%er? Do you want to have a 20% chance of succeeding? Or would you like to be a 90%er? 90% meaning 90% never drink again. And are you guys familiar with the Dalton Teen Challenge?
I've heard of it, but that's up in Minnesota as well, right?
No, that's worldwide.
Worldwide, okay.
Yeah. It's a Christian rehab. You go in there for 13 months.
13 months.
And that's a percentage. You go into a Dalton Teen Challenge and the percentages reverse. 80% are cured. Only 20% because they're in there for the wrong reason. Mm-hmm. But there was one person that I call him a 90%er. Actually, he's like a 95%er. 95% who's going to make it. Mm-hmm. And so people say, okay, how do I become a 95%er?
Right.
Follow Jesus. Get the spiritual realm in your life. You've got the willpower, but you've got all the distractions. Right. So that's a percentage.
Pat,
do you stop drinking?
Do you see AA? Because obviously, I don't know if that organization follows the tenets of AA. And AA is a spiritual program. Period. End. I mean, there's no getting around it. As Glenn says, it's mentioned throughout how it works. And do you find a higher level of success when people integrate the principles and practices of AA and the spirituality of AA? Do you find
absolutely?
Yes,
absolutely. Because one of the things of AA is that you admit what you are. I'm my name is Jack. I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
And then there's the principles to follow. But these are not the principles that these guys or women figured out.
No.
It's there in the book. It shows them. And then when they get to the higher power, it's up to them. Then they see that the higher power works. It didn't used to be a higher power. Right. It used to be Jesus.
Right.
Yes. God.
Yeah, the founding fathers. Yes.
But it's more inclusive now because there are Muslims and Buddhists and other people in there. So it's more exclusive.
Right.
I mean, just so many good points about doing it our way. And it takes surrender, man. You know what? Our best thinking got us into those rooms.
Right, exactly. Right.
And it's really impossible to think your way out. You can't fix a problem with the same brain that created it.
Right.
I mean, you just can't. And so it's good to get the outside help. And that's, hey, my mental fortitude works for some areas of my life. Mm-hmm. To change a behavior such as this, such as alcohol, or to change my psychic thinking about spirituality, it took a program. It took jumping in the deep end of the pool, diving in, questioning, learning.
And for you and I, it took doing things, 25 different things a day, a week, a month to keep us in this realm.
It's amazing, man. Just amazing. So love having Pat on.
Yeah, that was great.
This book. We'll put that in the resource room.
Absolutely.
And, man, that's a good find, man. And I love the picture in that book. It doesn't matter what storm you go through.
That's right.
There's help.
That's right. Yeah. Love it, man.
All right. Love you, brother.
All right. Have a good one.
Thanks, man.
All right,
bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.